All right, Charles, thanks so much for being here on the All Bets Are Off podcast. Very nice to meet you.
Same here. Thanks to our friend who mutually introduced us.
Yeah, Kathy is fantastic, and she'll actually be on the show right after you.
Oh, great. Well, I'm saying hello to her. Kathy Nadal, hello. I'm saying hello to you in advance.
So I want to jump right in because there's a million things that you do, and they are all things that interest me, oddly enough.
Good.
So here's where I want to start first is the music, more specifically the Beatles, because you actually do a Beatles tour in England, and I just want to know before you get into that. Let's zoom in on that. There we go. I love that. So before we even get into the tour specifically, tell me where your love of the Beatles starts.
I'm an old guy, so I saw them on my first memory in life is seeing them on the Ed Sullivan Show, February 1964, and I was hooked. I didn't have the chops to be a musician. I didn't have the talent to do what I needed to do to be either a musician or in a Beatles tribute band. But I did like everything else. I became a party DJ.
Mm.
Started publishing a magazine on the Beatles for many years. Started producing Beatles conventions and festivals, and the Beatles tour to Liverpool every summer since 1983.
Oh my God, since 1983, and you're still doing it.
Still doing it, 40 years plus, going strong, and people absolutely love it.
Wow. And for the people listening who are unfamiliar, can you give us just a rundown of like what are they going to see on this tour?
It's literally everything all what you've heard in the song, Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane, Abbey Road. It's the postcards you've seen, the pictures of the Beatles at their homes. It's 10 days of London, Liverpool, and everything Beatles. If you've ever been to a Beatles convention, you think, wow, this is it, man. Nothing could be better than this. Or you've seen Ringo or Paul in concert. No, this is it. This is the ultimate because we literally visit every possible place connected to the Beatles. You're traveling in the footsteps of the Beatles. And Liverpooltours.com is my company that we do it with, and people go and they have such a great time. 5 years later, they come back, and
Wow.
things are different because even though the places we visit are the same, the activities we do are always changing. We might go to, a Lennon tribute concert that's put on one night. Another one might
Mm.
be the Traveling Wilburys, if you're familiar with, the Harrison Project and all that. Another time we'll go inside Strawberry Fields. Another time we'll go inside the Casbah Club. So we mix it up so that if people are coming for the first time, they're getting everything they need to do. They get to cross Abbey Road, and they do Penny Lane, Strawberry Fields, all those places, and they go to the Cavern Club. But if they're repeating, they're now also getting new stuff. So I love doing it, and I host it. I mean, I'm their, front person and tour guide, and I make sure everyone has a great time.
Wow, I love that. That's so cool. And to stay on the topic of the Beatles, you're also an author and you have a Beatles book. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
I do. Thank you. I thought when I was publishing a fanzine for 20 years, I said, I'm going to do a book. I've been writing, on the Beatles for 20. I've done enough. And then COVID hit, and I found myself needing stuff to do. So I put out a horror book first, the book of top 10 horror lists. And all my Beatle people were like, hey, how dare you put out a horror book before a Beatles book? And I'm like, and sure enough, we followed it with the book of top 10 Beatles lists, where celebrities, rock stars, actors, athletes, you name it, gave their top 10 Beatle lists. And it could have been their favorite, concerts they saw of the Beatles. It could have been their favorite, single releases, their favorite songs, their favorite album, favorite solo, whatever. They had free reign to come up with a top 10 list. And people love the book. It's just such a fun read.
Oh, that's really cool. And before we move on from the Beatles book topic, can we tell everybody where they can get that?
Yeah, well, Amazon's always the best place to get it. If you have Amazon Prime, you get free shipping. But there's a website for it if they want to read more about the book and if they want to get a signed copy. And it's basically the title of the book, Book of Top 10, the number 10, not TEN, Book of Top 10 Beatles Lists.com.
All right, awesome. And again, staying on music and on books, you actually have a book too on the Turtles.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Why the Turtles? And I'll tell you, it's all in the title, not just Happy Together. Everybody knows, Imagine Me and You. Sing it with me.
Hmm.
I think
Absolutely.
everyone knows that song. But go deeper, man. These guys had top 10 hits. They were amazing concert performers. They performed with, they backed up Springsteen on T-Rex. I mean, if you read deep into their history, it's like, what? And there was never a book on them, and they're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There was never
Mm.
this amazing, complete anthology discography, everything on, and almost 600 pages worth of material. And it was put out by Genius Books. That's my most recent book. And not it's the website is the kind of the title of the book. It's www.notjusthappytogether.com.
Mhm.
And it's the Turtles A to Z. AM radio to Zappa, because
Mm.
when they stopped being the Turtles for a while and they were Flo and Eddie, they were touring with Frank Zappa. People don't understand, the magnitude of this band's creativity. And I always get into this. Questions. Well, why aren't they in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And I think there's an answer, and it makes sense when I look at the other bands that should be and aren't, like the Monkees, like Paul Revere and the Raiders. These were top 10 hit bands. They didn't put out they didn't have their Sergeant Pepper. They didn't have, their classic Dark Side of the Moon. They didn't have these incredible albums. They had hit after hit after that people sang and loved, but they were also funny. They had personality. They were on TV a lot. And it seems like, the Monkees, the Turtles, these bands that had the personality and the humor, maybe that sometimes overshadowed their great music and great vocals and all the stuff that they did musically. So anyway, I think they were the ones that deserved a book, and I'm really proud of what we created with it.
You know what I love about that is so I'm actually a Turtles fan. So it was when I said that you're into everything that I love. This just couldn't have worked out better. And actually, a few months back, I interviewed a friend of mine, Joe Hoekstra, who was actually in the Turtles for a while. And he had a wild career and ended up in the Turtles for a handful of years. Obviously, not an original member, but
Well, was he
go
an
ahead.
East was he an East Coast or a West Coast Turtle? And the reason I ask is this band was brilliant. They had a West Coast cast that when they went out, it was Flo and Eddie, Mark and Howard, and a backing up West Coast band. They come to America. They come to New York and the East Coast. They had guys here who were playing.
Well, Joel was a New York guy, so he was out this way. So
Great. Great. If I knew, I would have included him in the book, because some of the people who we included were people who played in, as Turtles through the years. One of them was Mitch Weissman, who was the original McCartney in Beatlemania. Another one is Greg Hawkes from the Cars, was their keyboard player. So yeah, I would have loved to have gotten him in the book. Well, I thought it was the most complete book ever. I missed him.
well, now he's out there jamming with Trans-Siberian Orchestra and Cher and Whitesnake and all these other bands. So I want to stay on your books because you did already mention that you have a horror book, which is another one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
So what's the premise behind the horror book? Is it kind of like the Beatles book? It's the top 10 celebrities ranking.
Well, so it's celebrities do the ranking,
Hmm.
and with the Beatle book, it was 64 celebrities. When I'm 64 and that magical year. For this one, we hit 100. I mean, there was 100
Hmm.
top 10 lists from different.
Oh wow, yeah. Let's zoom in on that.
Yeah, 100 top 10 horror lists from celebrities, and there's a lot of classic photos on there. But the people who are in the book, oh, I mean, again, rock stars,
Mhm.
actors, actresses, athletes, DJs, famous people who you wouldn't even think were horror people, and each of them had given me. Well, they could have given me their top 10 favorite movies, their top 10 favorite horror actors, their top 10 favorite TV shows of a horror nature. Had to be horror themed, but I gave carte blanche. With the Beatles, it was mostly their favorite songs. With this one, it was mostly movies. And
Hmm.
as such, what I did in both books is I did a really cool index. So if your favorite song was While My Guitar Gently Weeps, you can flip right to it and say, oh, wow, that's so cool. So and so, from this band picked that as his favorite. Oh, Dick Cavett? Really? He picked it. And with the horror book, it's the same thing. You pick a horror movie, you go in the back, The Exorcist. Oh, this person liked it. Oh, hard to believe, that kind of thing.
Oh,
The
that's cool.
Yeah, yeah. The funny one is we got Boris Karloff's daughter to
Mm.
give a list, Sarah Karloff, and is a friend of mine. So it was it's easier to get these lists when you have friends in the business. But she hates horror movies. She goes,
Mm.
I don't even I didn't even used to watch my dad's movies. She goes, I'll come up with something, and her list was top 10 things that scared her, and number 10 was having to do this list.
Good answer.
Right?
So
It's a fun read.
tell me then where your love of horror stems from. Where did that come from for you?
So I mentioned one of my first memories in life was seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. One of my other first memories in life is my mom sitting us down, and I don't want to say forcing me, but persuading me with force to watch Bride of Frankenstein. She loved those Universal horror movies. She loved, and you can see Frankie behind me, Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, Mummy, Creature from the Black Lagoon. I mean, she grew up and loved those. Well, she saw those in the movies because that was her, growing up in those days. So she wanted to impart her love of that onto me. And it took a few sittings and a few watchings, but my gosh, here I'm sitting next to a Creature from the Black Lagoon model. I got next to me horror. I'm surrounded by Beatles. I'm surrounded by Beatles. And I'm surrounded by horror, everything, comics. I'm just like the pop culture guy who just, those were my two loves. Yeah, so probably passed down. I'll take credit for, falling in love with the Beatles on my own, but I give my parents the credit for giving me the influence of the horror monsters. It wasn't horror in those days. It was monster movies. And
Yes.
the only way we would know what was on TV, because we didn't have streaming, I couldn't just type in, Hereditary and watch whatever movie I want on a streaming service. We would have to refer to the Bible. You know what the Bible was in those days?
What was that?
The TV guide.
Sometimes I kind of miss like sitting down and opening the newspaper and going through the TV guide like, oh my God, we got to watch this at whatever time, because if not, who knows when it'll be on again.
That's exactly what it was in those days. So we would go through the TV guide. It was a ritual, and we would circle. Oh, whoa! It's a Boris Karloff movie. I don't care how good it is. We got to watch it. We have to watch it. Bela Lugosi and all that stuff. And it was, yeah. And I imparted it onto my kids. I mean, we just went to see Bring Her Back and the Final Destination. So the horror movie doesn't come out that I don't go see with my kids now. But now it's horror. In those days, it was, you look back on the Frankenstein and Dracula movies, and I don't want to say they're comical, but they're tame. And in those days, they were very scary and impactful. Mm-hmm. But I still love them, still love seeing them, and still love talking about them.
Well, those will always be, in my opinion, they'll always be favorites. They're favorites of mine. I'd rather watch, Dracula or Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, or any of those movies, any Vincent Price movie. Just like those are the ones that you're like, oh my God, there's just something about them that's just perfect.
Well, you mentioned, people say, what's your favorite horror movie? And of course, when you say the word horror, I go right to The Exorcist. What's your favorite monster movie? Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. It's just, it brings a smile to your face just mentioning it. It's the perfect monsters combined with comedy. And who didn't love Abbott and Costello growing up? Who didn't love Frankenstein, tracing on the
and they did what was it, 4 of those movies? Abbott and Costello Meet the Invisible Man, and like everybody only talks about Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, but they're all good. And obviously that one's the favorite. It's still my favorite too, but they're all good.
All good. And I watched one, and I can't remember what it was, and I'd forgotten that it was not The Invisible Man. Maybe Meet Boris Karloff, the Killer. There's 4 or 5. Yeah. But when you have perfection, like it's the Beatles and everything else. So it's Abbott and Costello and everything else. Meet Frankenstein.
Yeah, for sure. And again, along those same lines, horror and monster movies were so captivating that you would see characters like Don Knotts, who did The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, and like those comedy guys like Abbott and Costello and Don Knotts, they couldn't wait to get their hands on the horror, the Universal monsters and things like that either.
Yeah. I love the Don Knotts movie. That's it, to this day. It's such a favorite. He's perfectly cast in that. But I don't think there was a comedy team that didn't do. Maybe the Marx Brothers didn't, but Martin and Lewis did one.
Mhm.
Bob Hope and Bing Crosby did one. The Bowery Boys did them, and the Three Stooges did a
Mhm.
bunch of them where they even repeated it. If one was with Curly, one was with Shem, same movie redone. Yeah, I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And that kind of stuff carried on as we see in, more recent years. I can't remember the year that it came out, but it's not too long ago was, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which is another updated comedy horror movie that's just fantastic.
Fantastic, and it's a lot of people don't know about it and should know
Yeah.
about it. You know, they know about what was the ones that they were doing for a while that were takeoffs on horror movies where they would do
Oh,
endless spoof
the scary movies?
scary movies, and those were fun. And
Mhm.
and there was a lot of thought went into them, and if you knew what they were referring to, it even added more to it. But for originality and for if someone doesn't know Tucker and Dale, they have to look it up and see it.
Absolutely. And, again, staying on the topic of the horror movies is one of the original Universal monsters and probably, the most famous actor who, came from that was arguably Bela Lugosi. You could say Boris Karloff, which is, again, arguably also could be true. But you do Dracula tours actually in Transylvania.
Let's
And that
let's
is,
let's show Bela. He should be. Is he behind me? Oh no, the Wolfman's behind me. I thought. Sorry, Bela. I don't know where you are. Dracula tours to Transylvania. So that's you talk about the Beatles tours to Liverpool, and if
Mhm.
if my other love is monsters, yeah, of course I'm doing Dracula tours to Transylvania, and
Wow,
we've been doing that since '98. And
98. Wow.
every year we spend a week. And what we do, and you'll appreciate this, because there's people who want, if they're going to Romania for the first time in their lives,
Mhm.
they want to see Romanian sites, they want Romanian history. Just like if they're going on my Beatles tour, I'm going to take them to Big Ben, Buckingham Palace. I'm going to take them to all the important London sites because
Mhm.
it might be the only time they're there. They're using Beatles as their reason to go to England. Well, if they're using Dracula as the only reason to go to Romania, so we're mixing the history of Vlad Tepes, Vlad the Impaler,
Yeah.
which is truth and its history and its actuality, with the fiction, the lore, the fun, if I may, of Dracula. And we follow in the footsteps of Jonathan Harker in Dracula's novel. And
Wow.
we visit castles, we visit Vlad's birthplaces, we visit
Mm.
where he was buried. It's just the if you love vampires, if you love Dracula, if you love any of this, horror stuff the way I do, this is the ultimate trip. So, Robbie, for many years, I guess if you wanted to go to Romania and taste something of what Dracula had to offer, you
Mhm.
would do one of these. Not insulting anyone of a certain age, but you would do these senior citizen type tours where you get up at 8 in the morning, breakfast, tour for a few hours, lunch, tour for another 2 hours, dinner, and then go to sleep, right?
Mhm.
And that was it. And one day you might have touched on a Dracula castle or something about the legend, maybe go to Brasov where the impalings took place. I said, no, if I'm a fan, I got to do this for fans. I got to do it for how a Dracula person would want it. And that's how I based everything, is how I would want it. And
Mhm.
I wanted a fully immersive week-long trip that covered every aspect of it. And that's what we do. We show Dracula films and horror films on board the coach. We do trivia on board. We go to all the places that are connected to Vlad, all the
Mm.
places that are connected to Dracula, and not in one day, not one afternoon, because that would never touch upon Bram Castle, would never touch upon the Carpathian Mountains, Borgo Pass, all these things you've heard about in all those movies where they talk
Yeah.
like that. So yeah, so we do all of it, and people come back. Just love. I'm so. I'll tell you. I'm so. I don't know. Say lucky, but I did. I hit on the right thing with Beatles and the Dracula tours and Ghost tours, which I'll tell you about in a minute.
Yeah.
Because the people who go are already in the mind of wanting to have a great time. They're already
Mhm.
loving the theme. They're already loving what's being presented, and they're loving the hosts who are working with them. When they come back, you know how you go to a restaurant and by best restaurant ever, they have an off day. The
Yeah.
soup is cold, whatever. We come back and it's 100% satisfaction. The people go on the Beatles tours, the Dracula tours, any of the tours I do. We're just lucky that we've hit the right elements of what to give them and how to present it. And it's the right mix of people because it's like-minded people and they have the greatest time. So the people go on Dracula Tour, which is www.dractours.com. And we have space for this October, but we do it every single year, and it falls in Halloween time, so people can experience Halloween in Eastern Europe once in their lives. But the people go have such a good time. And Charles, what else can you do? Well, we started doing ghost tours.
Wow.
Which were similar to the Dracula tour in theme, similar in the people who would go. And it's not just goth people. It's not just people into horror. It's folks who've done every other tour, and they've done their Caribbeans, and they've done this, and they want to go on something a little off the beaten path that sounds like fun, and it meshes so well. So we started doing ghost tours. The first one we ever did was to England, which made sense because Jack the Ripper and Tower Line, everything there is so haunted. And then we did Ireland and Scotland. And we thought, well, the same people are coming with us. They're having such a great time. We have to go to other places. Where do we go? We took them to Eastern Germany, Frankenstein's castles. We took them to Israel. We took them to Cuba, Romania, Hungary. So we kind of ran out of places, so that we're repeating the ghost tour to England again next summer for the first time in 10 years.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Well, people who've been to 10 years now of Dracula who want to do another tour with us, we're finally repeating the Dracula tour, the ghost tour to England. And it goes to places that you may not have even heard of, like Borley Rectory. And if you ever Google it, it's said to be one of the most haunted places in the world. The old pub at Jerusalem was the oldest pub in the world. We go to all these really haunted, amazing places. And it's toursofterror.com for the ghost. Yeah.
So let me ask you this, because clearly I could tell by talking to you just in this little bit that you're very knowledgeable about the history of these places, and you're very into it. So I had always heard that Dracula, or Vlad, I should say, the legend of Dracula came from him being a vampire because when they exhumed his grave, he wasn't there. Is that true?
All right. So why is he connected to that? Dracula means Dracul, which is Romanian for dragon. So there's, there's history, there's legends, there's tales that may or may not be true. We go to Snagov Island where he was buried. And it's a moat around the island. It's a little monastery that's run by this crazy monk with wild chickens running around. It's an amazing scenario. The setting it's like a movie in itself. And I guess years ago, when they were in a renovation, they dug up the grave, and it was a combination of animal bones, human bones, and no head.
Wow.
Which makes sense. No skull, because if you're burying a vampire who's a true vampire, you're gonna put that head somewhere else, or you're gonna burn it. You're gonna just make sure it's not coming back. When we go on some of these tours, where witches were buried or where demonic people were buried, there's sometimes chains over the graves. And other places, they're not buried 6 feet under, because that would be defacing and making the earth sacrilegious. They don't give them the honor of being buried in. They're buried outside of the cemeteries. So it's a lot of crazy stuff. But you hit on it. Yeah, there is something very screwy about where the actual Vlad was buried, but we go to that site where it is, and we go to where he was born. We go to a place called Sighisoara, which is a walled city right in Romania, not far from Bucharest, and it's just like it was in ancient times. The wall is still the same as it was, and we went there once, and they were the cemetery right in town is next to a big church, and the church was undergoing renovations. And all these human bones had come up from underground from a rain and from them doing all this excavating. It was like the freakiest thing. One year, with bones everywhere. The church is there. It's the church is haunted. The cemetery's haunted, and here we are in the building where Vlad was born. It's just amazing stuff.
Wow, that's incredible. And I want to point out too, I don't know if we said it or if you said it, but you're a paranormal investigator. So you're into these things, and you also have a book of ghost stories. Are they your stories?
You're good. You have it all covered. So that's the book that, I really get the most traction from, because I do a lot of investigations and I do a lot of conventions. And that book it's evergreen. People want a copy of it. It's called True Ghost Stories of Connecticut. And it's close to my heart because I'm from Connecticut, and I wasn't going to do True Ghost Stories from the Bronx because I moved out of there too long ago. But True Ghost Stories of Connecticut came about because I consider myself new to the paranormal field. Only about 10 years of really being an investigator, partnering with mediums and investigators who are far more knowledgeable and professional, if I can use that word, than I am. And I saw all these books. It was like ghost stories of Oshkosh, ghost stories of Buffalo, ghost stories of here. But that did was it told the place and its history.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't interest me as much as what happened when Robby and Charles went to this place together, knew of its history, and then had an experience, had results. That's what I wanted. So I went to all these other paranormal investigators. I went to people who'd been, exploring places forever. And I said, give me your most story, the one thing that happened to you that stays in your mind that will blow everyone's mind. And the first response is like, when you ask someone what's their favorite Beatles song, oh man, I got so many, I can't. What's your favorite horror movie? Oh, I got so. What's your favorite or most outstanding ghost story? Oh, I've been on investigation 50 years. I don't want to hear that. I want one. Give me the one, baby. And I would really put him to the test. And 33 chapters, 30 of which I got from others, and that I added graphics, added photos, whatever I needed to do, put in 3 of my own chapters. And the book it's a slammer. People love it, and I'm really proud of it. And I'm working on a second edition of it. Now, when you talk about the Beatles book, I hear so much, oh, Charles, I love the book, and I'm not that great of a Beatles fan, which is hard to believe that anyone's not. And they say, well, I loved it because it was nice reading what celebrities wrote, and I love top 10 lists. I heard that with the horror book. I love the book, even though I'm not a huge horror fan. I don't go see a lot of horror movies, but it was great to read, what so-and-so said about this movie and that movie. And I love top 10 lists. With the ghost story book, every town should have this book, every city or every state, and someone should follow my lead, because this is what's really interesting. You've heard of this place, this cemetery, this prison, this old psycho ward that's now closed up. Yeah, its history. You know why it might be haunted or why its history is being haunted. But now you have a book that tells you what happened to people who visited there, who explored there. And that's the beauty of this book. And people love it from everywhere. I mean, people overseas have gotten this book and said, oh, I want to visit Connecticut, to see these places. I go, you don't have to. Just enjoy the book. It's True Ghost Stories of Connecticut, but the website is www.paranormalconnecticut.com.
Okay. So you kind of took my next question and threw it out there already, because it's the same question you were asking everybody else, because I want to know if you could give us one of your favorite stories that happened to you.
The one that I didn't put in the book, and you can't tell anybody, right? This is just between me and you.
Of course.
What happened in my home, and my wife did not want me to put it out there. And the reason being, she doesn't want wacky paranormal investigators to come around at midnight with flashlights around our home. So I kind of get it, because that's not what we do. We go to established places and we ask permission and we do it professionally and all that.
Right.
But I get that. And she also says, when the kids grow up and you don't want them to have nightmares. So okay, I agreed. I'll tell you the story that I had to put in my book. And why do I put had to? My book was finished.
Mhm.
And I did a little chapter on a few places that I went to, and the editor goes, "Wait, where's your wow story? Where's your unbelievable, thing that happened to you?" And I go, I've only been, exploring for a little while. I mean, I don't really have that." And I sat with it for a little while, and it hit me. Oh my God, I had the most unbelievable experience when I was in college, and I'd forgotten it. I don't know if this was a repressed a memory thing, but I had this experience with a friend of mine, Eddie, who I went to college with, and he took me to the Pink Lady.
Mm.
I said, "I'm never going to the Pink Lady." I thought it was a hooker or a stripper or the Pink Lady. What is this, man? And when we finally went, there's a whole story behind it, and sure enough, it was the most unbelievable, surreal. I saw a ghost. I can't put it any other way. And
Wow.
it blew my mind so much, and it's a long story. I mean, I do a lot of library appearances, and I tell this story, and, I took my parents the next night, and we had the same exact experience. They saw it too, because they couldn't believe me when I came home and told them I saw a ghost. They was like, "Oh, yeah,
Wow.
sure." Yeah, the PS to this story is before I went to print with the book, this was the very last chapter, I reached out to this kid, Eddie, who I
Mm.
went to college with, and I hadn't spoken to him in years and years and years. How did I find him? Facebook, of course. Found him, and I said, "Hey, how are you? A little here and there. What have you been up to? You married? Blah blah blah. You still going to concerts?" He always loved the Who. I love the Beatles. I love the Monkees. He loved Springsteen. So he was a little more sophisticated than I am. But he, I said, "Eddie, there's one other thing I got to throw by you. Do you remember us going to see the Pink Lady?" And he didn't respond for a few days, and then he wrote back, "Oh my God, I'd forgotten about that." I'm like, "Oh, what?" He also forgot about such a wow moment of our lives. And I go,
Mhm.
"Well, I wrote a chapter and I'd like you to read it." And he wrote back, "OMG, um, word for word, verbatim, this is exactly how it did happen." And I knew that was it. That would be the chapter in the book. So yeah, the Pink Lady is my is my story. And I go to libraries and I mention this, and nobody's heard of the Pink Lady. And you
Mm.
think that every town that has its legend, every city that has its mystery Midnight Mary or whatever,
Mhm.
the people know about it. It's passed down from generation to generation. And Pink Lady, one old timer, one guy at a library once, I told the story, and he goes, "Yeah, I remember. I went." He didn't talk like that. Obviously, he wasn't from Alabama, but he said, "Yeah, I remember the exact same thing, and I did visit it, and I saw the same ghost." So, got little validation from
Wow.
one person, but you would think that 20, 100 people would have heard about it, and it's not. So I'm
Wow.
glad it's in the book. So it keeps the Pink Lady alive, and she ain't a stripper, and she ain't a hooker.
All right. Now, I want to stay on the paranormal topic for just one more second because I want you to tell the listeners about Paracon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. 5 years now. We've been putting on Connecticut's original paranormal convention. This year we've added a true crimes element. So it's the paranormal convention and true crimes conference. This is the first time we're bringing in like a celebrity guest,
Mm.
and he's kind of off topic. He's not paranormal. He's not crimes, but he's a friend of mine. And I thought, let's bring in Butch Patrick, Eddie
Oh,
Munster, just to.
here's my Lily for you.
Oh my God, I love it. That's it, man. Mutual admiration society. That sealed it. That sealed the deal.
Yep.
Oh my, that's very impressive. Yeah, growing up, if you loved having a cell, that was the next probably natural, evolution. You love the Adams Family and the Munsters, but maybe the Munsters a little more. And Eddie's he's come to my Dracula tour with me
Oh wow.
one of the years as a special guest, and he's been a friend for probably 20 years.
Oh
So I
my
said,
God.
"Come on, come to the convention, whatever it takes. We'll put you up, we'll fly you, whatever fee you want." And he said, "Of course, Charles, I'd be honored to." So maybe this will branch it out. Most of the people who come to the paranormal conventions are either already believers
Mhm.
or bringing friends who they want to introduce to it. I think this might open it up to a larger scope. The fact that it's a true crimes conference, that we have guests in that field as well, not just paranormal, but now it's more, there's some horror people, some monsters, and having Eddie Munster. Come on, Butch Patrick. I would spend the $20 to go to a show just to meet him.
Oh God, absolutely. I've been reaching out to that guy for 2 years trying to get him on my podcast. So I would absolutely spend the money to go meet him for sure.
Cool. Very cool. Thanks. Because people question it in the beginning. They go, well, why don't you get, a well-known paranormal guest? Well, a well-known paranormal guest is well-known only in the paranormal field.
Correct.
And the people who I got most of them already. So you have to sometimes reach. There's a very famous convention on the East Coast called Chiller Theater.
Yeah.
Started out as a horror con, all the guests were monsters. Well, then it became celeb. Now it's everything. And it comes to a point where, you reach that point where you think you've, maxed out with the Beatle guests. Like I was the first one to bring in people like Tommy Rowe, who opened for the Beatles, Peter Tork, because I thought the Monkees and the Beatles, were tangential type of acts. And at that point, it was the biggest reason was because I didn't want to repeat guests, and all the guests were done, and all the guests were great. But I thought if I opened it up that little more, that it'll bring in more people who might not otherwise come. And the same logic of, definitely. We do a Salem paranormal convention, the Salem Paranormal and Horror Convention, and they're full. So we've had, Friday the 13th guests. We've had the mom from Silent Night, Bloody Night, whatever that movie is. So we tried to, make that very much 50% horror, 50% paranormal. But the Connecticut one, we try to stay a little more pure to the paranormal. But this is just a little surprise tidbits that we've been doing to make it more mass appeal and just more fun to the people who would be going otherwise.
All right, that's awesome. Well, just to navigate just slightly away from the paranormal, but not too much, I want to mention that you've also been in horror films, and I want the listeners to be able to check some of these out. So do you know where they're streaming at the moment?
So right now, the most recent one I was in, and it's an anthology of 4 or 5 horror shorts with a wraparound, and it's called Halloween Candy. And it's on Tubi and some other streaming platforms. And they're just beginning work on Halloween Candy 2. So we have to find a way for me to somehow be in it, even though I was killed in the first one. Robert, I am killed in so many movies. There's a movie called Pink Eye where I got the crowbar through the neck into the where I'm killed in an insane asylum. I am killed by a stapler through the head in Tiny's Halloween 30, a bunch of no-name movies. But I'll tell you what I'm most proud of is I was in The Sadist, which is a movie with Tom Savini. And I get to play the dad, and I'm in the beginning, but I'm the first voice you hear in the trailer. So if you type in The Sadist, Tom Savini, and you play the trailer for it, that's my voice that you hear first.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
And I'm in something called Zombie Chronicles, where I get shot in the head, and that's a good juicy role. But probably my most famous and best known role is non-horror. I played Elton John in HBO's Flight of the Conchords.
Oh, wow.
In the second season, it's a show with Art Garfunkel's on it, and there's a Bono lookalike. It's a really crazy episode. But there's 2 Elton Johns. It's Patton Oswalt is one of them, and I'm the other, and we go. Wow. Facing each other. So
that's really cool. That's awesome.
It's so cool.
Well, you brought the conversation back to music. So one of my final questions is going to be, I could be wrong about this, but were you also putting on a music festival at one point?
Wow. Yeah. So I just recently did the Beatles. We do the Fab Four Music Festival, and I do that in Connecticut for a long time. But in 2020, I put on RockCon, which a lot of people who went to it, it's like, oh, that was the golden goose of these type of conventions. What I thought, Robby, is this was going to be the Comic-Con of rock and roll. I had 100. It was a weekend of 100 rock stars.
Oh, wow.
One of the Beach Boys, one of the Supremes, Tommy James. It was like, I forgot, Bobby Steele from the Misfits, all over the place. Heavy metal guys. oldies guys, doo-wop guys, rock and roll guys, everything in between, and some that I didn't think people would know. Ron Dante, who was the lead singer of the Archies, who's now
Mm.
one of the Turtles, was there. Al Jardine from the Beach Boys, Mary Wilson from the Supremes, Tommy James and Shondells, and it was 100 rock stars sitting at tables, signing autographs, taking pictures of people, and
Wow.
it made sense. There were horror conventions, there were Comic Cons. There wasn't anything like that for rock and roll. But I lost a fortune. I took full page ads in the New York Times, the Daily News, the Post, USA Today, CBS
Wow.
Radio, and had I had deep pockets, that advertising would have translated to future shows, and each year I would have gotten different people and different rock stars and different, it would have gone on and on. But it was a one and only, and there's never been one since, which blows my mind.
Wow.
But 2010 RockCon, I'm very proud of that. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Now, before I get you out of here, two more things. And the first one is I need you to plug your social media so everybody listening who doesn't already follow you can start to follow you. And anything that's upcoming that you want to talk about that maybe we didn't get to, or just plug one
Oh,
more time.
great. I appreciate it. So all the books go under my last name, Rosenay, Rosenay. If you put it on IMDb, you'll see my roles. If you want to watch any of the films, if you want to go on Amazon, you'll see where the books are. Each event has its own website. So the one that's coming up the soonest that we mentioned earlier is July 12th and 13th. It's Connecticut's paranormal convention, CT Paracon. The website is Paracon, as in Connecticut,
Mhm.
paracon.org, www.paracon with two N's.org. And then right after that, we have in August, the Connecticut Witch Festival, which is
Mm.
a free admission event. It's in Hartford, Connecticut, one of the places where unfortunately the trials took place and all that nasty stuff. And we do that every August. And then Salem is until November. But if you Google my last name, or if you do Instagram Rosenay, Facebook Rosenay, you'll find me, and you'll find all these crazy things I do. The Beatles tour, LiverpoolTours.com, Dracula tour, DracTours.com, and they can rewind it to hear the rest.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. This was so much fun.
Thank you. Thank you for finding ways to get me to talk about stuff I don't usually talk about and squeeze it into an hour. Amazing.
I was like overly prepared because there was so much stuff that you do that I'm interested in, and I was like, all right, I got it. I can do this.
You did it. You did it. All right. So we take me out of here by the hook, and we bring in Kathy to now. And Robby, thank you so much, my friend. I hope we can meet sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you again.
Cheers.